Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Round the Ropes podcast, YouTube exclusive. I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. Now, you guys know we talk a lot about Immortal. We put them over as much as we can. They have a show coming up September 16th in West Mooreland, New York. Definitely go get your tickets. They're still available. And one of the guys who we have on tonight is one half of Power Supply. I've said it to him before we went live. One of the biggest parts of the tag team division when it comes to Immortal Championship Wrestling. The one, the only Adam Stone himself. Adam, what's going on?
Oh, just hanging out. Excited to be here. Excited to be on the podcast, and looking forward to the next Immortal show.
Believe me, I wish I was making the trip up there. I really was.
But understandable. Now that I know where you're from, that is more than understandable. That's a heck of a drive.
Well, let's get into it now. Before we get into what's going on in Immortal, what got you into pro wrestling? Was there a match or a moment that you're sitting there going, okay, I want to get into this crazy sport?
So I've told the story before, so I apologize if people have heard it, but my grandparents and parents were huge into pro wrestling, and I'm kind of from the Utica area-ish, and so there's a lot of pro wrestling in Utica at the Utica Auditorium. So I remember being 3-4 years old, going over to my grandparents' house, watching a lot of wrestling. So that's kind of like what introduced me to the sport. So I've been watching it since I've been a little kid. Like that's kind of where it started. And in hindsight, like the earliest memory I have in pro wrestling is I've told the story before is I don't know if you remember Hulk Hogan versus Zeus back in Yeah, that was kind of the, I remember I remember watching it and I was like, man, who's gonna stop this guy? That was like I remember as a little kid, that's what kind of got me hooked, and I have been a fan ever since.
So then when did you officially decide, now is that what led you into wanting to become a pro wrestler? Like when did you officially make the decision to say, okay, I want to go into pro, I want to become one of these guys?
So, man, it's probably about like 16, 17 years ago. I was driving my way to school and I heard a radio advertisement for 2CW Wrestling, which is at that point, it was relatively new, but they had Jake the Snake Roberts was going to be there. And I think Matt Hardy, they had a bunch of guys that were going to be there. And I was like, wait a second, that's not WWE. What is going on? And went to the show. I had a great time. I remember getting like front row tickets for $10 or something like that. And I was like, this is crazy. And it was a phenomenal show. And after the show, they were talking about a professional wrestling school called the Institute of Pro Wrestling. Hey, if anybody wants to be a pro wrestler, you can learn how to do it in Syracuse. Now, at the time, I was like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I don't know. Like, I'm in school, everything like that. And rewind, and I guess fast forward, but rewind now, about 6-7 years ago, at the brewery, one of my friends came in, was watching Monday Night Raw and said, hey, do you know what would be cool if we became pro wrestlers? I was like, now, wait a second here. I was like, there's a school out in Syracuse, which is about a 50-minute drive or so. I go, I don't know if it's still there, but let's send a message if you want to go try it. Like, I was like always scared to do it by myself, but as soon as one of my friends was like, hey, let's do it. And the rest is history. I showed up, and they couldn't get rid of me.
Now, with your ring name of Adam Stone, was that your decision, or did somebody present you that idea? How did that name come to fruition?
So the original story, when I got into it, so I don't know if you're familiar with New York Championship Wrestling, but a guy that I knew that he's a very good friend of mine is Johnny Patches, was the promoter, and he was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing it. I heard you're getting into it. As soon as you're ready, you have a spot on my show. So he kind of came up with the name with Adam Rogers, was what he wanted me to go by. And the reason being was he was like, oh, you're like, I had known him for a long time. He's like, you remind me of Captain America. You always want to do the right thing. Steve Rogers, Adam Rogers, kind of how it came. But my first match was a Royal Rumble. So I got introduced, and I was very fortunate. I had about 50 people bought tickets from me. They came, and they're chanting Adam Stone, and I'm like sweating bullets. I'm nervous. I'm like, well, why are they yelling at it? Because it's Stone from 16 Stone. So that is kind of how the name began, stuck. Wasn't really my choice, but it worked out.
Hey, it's giving you a little bit of a career so far.
Yeah, that's so far so good. I can't complain.
Now, obviously, other than Immortal, and like I said, we'll get into Immortal in a second.
Yeah.
Are there any other companies up in like that Utica, Albany area that you do wrestle for, or is it just Immortal?
So as of right now, it's Immortal and New Pro Wrestling is probably the two local promotions that I've been doing shows for. And I did a few months ago, I wrestled in Syracuse at Wild Zero Wrestling.
Okay.
And I know they got a show coming up in September that unfortunately I cannot go to, but they did ask me, and there's a lot of phenomenal talent there. So that's kind of the three local ones in the area. Then I was with NYCW for 4 years until Johnny Patches sold the company, and then we all know the story of what happened there. So that's kind of the local ones. I did a lot of my friends wrestle at Excite, and I popped up at Excite for a show, but for the most part, it's Immortal and New Pro Wrestling.
I was lucky. I happened to go to one Excite show when they were still at the mall.
Yep.
And well, first of all, what was funny is first time being up there, and I get the directions, and I'm walking through this mall, and I'm like, because like in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be like a wrestling ring's gonna be like right in the center of the mall, and it's gonna be to the right, you're gonna see like a Pizza Hut, like that's what I figured in my head.
Right.
So also, I'm walking through this mall, I'm like, did I miss it? Where the hell is it? And then I see a long line. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's over there. And I'm like, it's in the. I'm like,
yeah.
It was the most bizarre thing, but honestly, I'm hoping one of these days to make the trip up to another Excite show. Because Excite to me is one of those, like I said, a lot of people talk about Immortal. A lot of people talk about ESW, which is, I think, the show, the company that runs up in Buffalo.
Correct, yep.
But I think Excite's also that other company that's like not a lot of people talk about Excite.
Yep.
But I think...
And they just, not to interrupt, but they just had the show, and like it's and I'm a little biased too because a lot of my very good friends and training partners are all out there. So like Mark, Corey Ting, obviously Mike, Jake, like they did a show, and like Kurt Angle's on the show, Matt Cardona was on the show. So like they do bring in some big names, and they got phenomenal talent over there.
Oh, I completely agree. And again, guys, if you're in the area, definitely go check out Excite. But also, let's get into the bigger company that you're a part of, and the company that we talk about religiously on this show, and that's Immortal Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
Before we get into, Power Supply and all that stuff, how did you find out about Immortal, and how did you get in, how did that whole relationship get started?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story because so I was the Newark Championship Wrestling through and through. So I kind of, like they, I don't want to say they were rival companies, but they were, I don't know, depending, call it what you want to call it.
Yeah.
So, but I had popped up at Immortal a couple times, and I met Mike, and I expressed interest, but it's also hard too because like I have the brewery, so I don't have a ton of weekends free to do wrestling shows 4 or 5 times, so he basically, as soon as I got the word, hey, it's done, I reached out to Mike. I said, hey, if you'd have me, I would love to be there. I had, Mike Skyros was there, like, Mark Aziel was there, Corey and Tate, like, so I had a lot of my friends were there. So I was just kind of, the last man on the sinking ship, if you will. And I was like, as soon as you'd have me, I would love to be there. And that's kind of, the rest is history, and they took care of me.
Now, Power Supply, was that an Immortal thing only, or were you guys Power Supplying, tag partners in these other companies as well?
Yeah, so we started teaming about 3 years ago. It was when Mark made his debut in he debuted at NYCW. He actually debuted at Excite, but he went to NY, did a couple matches there, and didn't love the direction that he was going. And he's a great friend of mine, and him and I really see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I kind of had like a singles thing going that kind of fizzled out, and I was like, hey, you know what? We're good friends. We're training partners. Let's team up. And, I think we did a couple shows together. And then it wasn't long after that we started teaming. We did a couple Flower City tapings, and we did a bunch of stuff like that. So then once we both got to Immortal, like we were pretty much a team the last year and a half at Immortal.
Now, how did the name Power Supply, how did that come?
So that you know what? I 100% give credit to Mark. He was like, I was like, hey, let's come up with a team name, and he's like, Power Supply. Like that was it. Like he knew it. Like he saw it. He knew he had the vision. He had the logos. He had everything. So it was like almost instant. Like that was his idea, his baby, his creation, and I went with it.
Hey, like I said, it's giving you guys an identity, and
Yep.
like I said when we opened up this interview, it's giving you guys that position. I feel where you guys are in that echelon of the top tag teams, because there's you guys, there's Edge of Hope, and then there's the guys who have been the biggest thorn in your side, or you've been the biggest thorn in their side.
Right.
I feel like since the start, since at least since I have been a fan of Immortal.
Yeah. It was so. When we had started, we had a brief feud with Ataxia that we ended up doing a barroom brawl match. So it was like a little bit of a hardcore match, and then we after about like I think it was like 3 or 4 shows, we we did actually triple threat tag match. It was the number 1 contender in Utica, and it was us versus Black and Yellow versus American Strong Style, and we won that. And then we have been after Blazing Bin for about a year now. About a year. It has been a long time, a long time.
Well, let me ask you this. Obviously, you guys had the match in St. Johnsonsville. That was, I remember, my first exposure to the entitled. I guess you could say not only to you guys, but to Immortal in it itself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah, it was at least there had AC in there, other than Kobolska, but we'll get to that one in a bit.
Yeah.
But you guys had the match there, and I feel like the way you guys had that match, and again, I'm not somebody who would sit there and say, I've been in the ring, I've taken a bump. Believe me, I'm the biggest klutz imaginable. You can ask anybody. I'm the biggest klutz on, that can walk. I can trip over nothing.
It happens.
Oh yeah. But I felt like you guys had the story there that it's like, okay, this isn't going to be the end.
Right.
That I was like, okay, there's more to this story. And obviously, yes, like we saw in Utica, Edge of Hope kind of inserted themselves into it.
Yep.
But I think the rivalry, to be honest with you, is more of you guys and the Sons of Allah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's been yeah. So since that St. Johnsville, so we had a shot at them at the St. Johnsville show. Then it was tough because the March show got canceled. We were hoping to get a rematch in March, and then we had the Royal Rumble in April, which I don't know were you at the Royal Rumble show or not, but so we were on the Royal Rumble together where Ben wins it, and then the following show we actually wrestled High Seas, which was those guys are absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if you guys haven't checked them out. Check them out. Those guys, I have nothing but amazing things to say about those guys, Cloudy and Captain Nick Ando. And then that was God. I just can't. We just got to beat them. That's it. Like we have to. We have no other choice.
Well, then you get to the show in Kobolska.
Yes.
And it's you versus Blaze.
Yes.
And of course, in typical Blaze fashion, he snuck out a victory.
Yes. Loses the boot, grabs the ropes. It's just annoying.
But here's the thing I will say though. It is annoying, but I also felt like he did his job as being the bad guy, because the biggest thing I remember from that night, I was second row. If you're coming down the ramp, okay,
yep.
I was second row on the left-hand side.
Okay, yeah.
So I was literally right there where everything was happening. Yep. You heard that crowd chanting for your name.
Oh yeah.
I mean, granted, it was also in the middle of a barn and there was no air conditioner in there.
Oh. I'll tell you what, one of the most wild experiences I've ever had in wrestling was I will never forget during that match is seeing over. I remember I'm walking to the ropes and I'm seeing Gabby or Susie from Stranger Things chanting Adam Stone. It was kind of cool. Yeah, that was a hot venue. It was loud, and like when I'm telling you, like I am very grateful that the fans are behind me, and it was so loud that I remember before the match talking to the referee. I was trying to say something to him, and we could not hear each other. We were like that far away from each other. And I just remember I was like, hey, whatever you're telling me, just you got to have to wait because I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
But the one thing I will say, and I've said this about Immortal for, since I've been a fan of it, the fan base of Immortal Championship Wrestling to me is not only the most loyal fan bases,
Yep.
but they will make you know that they're there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another thing from that show is I remember being outside because it was so hot. I remember being outside changing, and when Garrett won, to say that he blew the roof off would be an understatement. It was so loud, and I was just like, wow, this is fantastic. This is what it's about, and it's the Immortal has done a fantastic job. They consistently pack the place. Like I think front row sold out in like less than 24 hours for this show in West Mooreland. So they're building, and it's the fans that make the show. Like I've been to shows where you got 300 fans that are sitting on their hands, and it's, boy, what a weird feeling that is. And I've been to shows where 50 people, and if they're loud, that's the best show. And we're fortunate to have both.
I've unfortunately been to shows in Jersey where there's 15 people.
Yeah, it's rough.
Oh,
it's rough.
I feel sorry when it's shows like that. I feel sorry for the guys and gals in the ring. I'm like, okay, you wait so long, especially if you're somebody who's first coming into independent wrestling. It's like, okay, great, I'm finally get that big exposure. You walk out, you're like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And and a lot, like, and it goes both ways too. Like a lot of people don't realize if you got a show at 7:00, like you're there at 3. If you got a 4-hour drive, you're leaving at 11:00, like you're putting in 12, 13, 14, 15 hours, and you hope the fans are there, but it's wrestlers got to help promote, it's and the same thing too is like we were talking earlier, I can't remember if we were recording or not, but the amount of people I know will be like, hey, I'm into pro wrestling, and they're like, oh, WWE, and it's like, well, there is other stuff too. I am not I love I love all the big ones, but like there is other stuff too. There is other stuff.
Well, now I want to get to the show in Utica, because that show to me, it felt like WrestleMania almost.
Okay, yeah.
I maybe it's just because I was a fan, and I think I was just more mesmerized by the fact that this little podcast, which we were one of the sponsors, made it to the Titantron.
Yeah.
And the only way I knew about that was, obviously, like I mentioned before, my co-host and the ring announcer, Ryan Peterson. We had gotten there earlier in the day, and I was talking to a lot of the other guys because, a lot of them know who I am.
Yeah.
And also Ryan looks at me and goes, look up. And I looked up, and all I see is the logo. I see this logo on the Titantron. And I had a moment there because, unfortunately, a few days prior to that, we had lost one of my dogs.
Oh, yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
So, and he had been a part of this whole journey since I've been podcasting now for 12 years.
Yeah. Wow. It's a long time. Yeah.
So he was a part of it basically even before I started podcasting.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a picture of him. Thank God nobody saw this. Kind of took a picture that I have of him, kind of pointed up to the Titantron. I go, look, you may not be here, but I made it.
No, that's incredible.
That to me, and I know it's comes off, that I'm marking out for myself. But when you've been told for so long by people, oh, you don't have what it takes, to have that moment right there where it's like, okay, this little show that I still don't feel is a big show, but apparently it's become bigger than I thought it's been.
Yep.
And the fact that it's made it up there, which is going to be seen by everybody up in Utica, who was in that venue that night. Plus, it was also going to be shown to everybody on Premiere.
Yep. And
I was just like, I think that's why I kind of felt like, okay, this is WrestleMania, because it was like, okay. But for you, being in that venue, obviously, you're the hometown boy.
Yep, that helps, yeah.
But being in that venue, what was going through your mind?
Well, when they first announced that it was going to be at the Nexus Center, so like I'm from the area, so like I'm very aware that this is a very big deal for this. Like it is. I think it was like a $19 million facility. For those who don't know, there's 3 hockey rinks connected right to the Utica Auditorium, and there's a bar upstairs. Like it is absolutely beautiful, and it's when you walk in, it's kind of like, and much credit to Immortal and Mike King, and they made it happen, because there's a lot of places they hear pro wrestling and they're like, I don't know if I want that in my establishment. But the Titantron was huge. Like the big board was huge. Like you walk in and it's, you got the stadium, the padded chairs, and it's just kind of like, hey, this is a big deal. Like before anything else. And it's like you said, you walked in, you saw the sponsors, you saw all the matches being displayed on the big board. They're on the little TVs all around, and then, I mean, obviously too, like you've got private space for Enzo, private space for Teddy Long, like having those big names, like we all grew up watching them on TV, and, and then you see there and like, hey man, you see them in the locker room, it makes it it gives it like a big presentation, and, and a part of, and, without, you have to also include that crowd was hot. Like that crowd from the first match to the last match, the crowd was loud. Like we could hear, like if people think they can't hear it, we could hear it in the back, and it's the, I mean, like that, the VIP press boxes, like it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
And the other part I was going to say is I actually got a chance to walk into the locker room, obviously, because I went with Ryan. And Ryan's like, oh, come with me. I'm like, are you sure? Because I've always had the mentality, I'm just a fan.
Right.
So I was looking at it as, the locker room is for the wrestlers, which I'm not.
Right.
And every time it happens, he'll look at me, he'll go, John, come here. He goes, you're a part. He goes, you may not want to admit it. He goes, but you're a part of this industry.
Yep.
I mean,
12 years, and I will say, like 12 years to do anything is quite the achievement. So you should be very happy with that. 12 years is a long time, long time.
12 years when you're told, when you've done I've done countless sports shows and every one of them flopped in one way, shape, or form. And this is going to be my last go around.
Yeah.
And I just told somebody this recently. I basically gave this show 6 months. Had this show not become something in 6 months, that was it.
Yep.
And we're about to hit 2 years this November.
Now look at it.
But now also I look at it this way. With the opportunities that the show is getting, and the recognition that the show is getting now, it blows me away. Because like I sit there and I still look at it as, oh, I'm just, I'm not busted open or like Jericho's podcast or Austin when he had his. But I've had, how many times I've had wrestlers who will come up to me, like especially like in Jersey, and will say to me, John, I'm glad you were here. You're one of the people I was hoping who can be here. And I'm like, I'm like, am I missing something here?
No, it's part of it, man. It's part of it. You're like, next time I see you at the show, I'm going to be looking for you, like, it's just how it is. You build the connections, you spread the word, if one wins, everybody wins.
Oh yeah. And that's all I try to do is I try to give independent wrestling that platform that a lot of these other podcasts, I feel, and I'm not trying to sit there and say, oh, my podcast is better than everybody else. No, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not. I don't have that mentality. But when I can give independent wrestlers this platform and be like, hey, you want to hop on and tell your story, let more people know about you. I mean, I said this to somebody last, when we did our regular show. If all of a sudden one of these guys, one of these wrestlers who I have on happened to get to WWE or AEW, yes, I doubt it's going to be because of my podcast. But it's going to get them more exposure.
Yeah.
It's going to get more eyes on them.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do. But I want to get back into this rivalry that you have with, the Sons of Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it has not been announced yet what's going to happen at West Mooreland. I have a feeling it's going to be announced pretty soon. If it is you guys again, you and the Sons of Allah, being that you face them now, this is going to be the second time as a tag team.
Yeah.
Third time, obviously, you and Blaze had the match at Cobleskill.
Yeah.
Is your mindset going to be a little different? Because it's like, okay, you've tried everything now, and it seems like they have. And I'm not trying to talk bad about it, but I'm just saying, is your mindset going to change a little bit? Being like, okay, we've went through war with them in St. Johnsonsville. I went to war with Blaze at Cobleskill. is your mindset going to change going into this one if you guys do end up having to face the Sons of Allah again?
I mean, yeah, you always want to do better. You always want to put on a good show for the fans, and it's just, if you give them here and it didn't work, you got to go up, and that's just kind of how it is. And especially like the triple threat match at the last show was wild. Like it got intense, and I know there's the other tag team that ran down to there at the end, and it gets to the point where it's we have to win. It starts to get like that game 7, like it's win or go home, and we're at the point now where I don't know how many more chances we're going to get if we keep losing, kind of deal. So it's the pedal to the metal. It's it. There's nothing else to do. Like we have to win. There's no other option.
I know. I completely agree. But now, do you look at, like, let's say it is going to be at this show, or it could possibly be at Cobleskill or whatever the show in November is going to be.
Yeah.
If you do get the opportunity to face them again in any of these next 3 shows to close out the year,
yeah.
To put it in a sports reference,
yes.
Does it come off to you as like, okay, this is game 7, bottom of the 9th,
yeah,
bases loaded type of setup?
That's kind of what it's feeling like, yeah, because it's the last year it was kind of us versus them, and then now you have other teams trying to get in there, and and it's you fight so hard for your spot, and sometimes you lose sight of other teams that are popping up, so it's like you got to give it everything. That's it. It's the game 7. It's the bottom of the 9th. It's the World Series. Like we're all in. We're all in, and it's Mark's wild. He'll do whatever he's got to do. Like we'll get it. We have to do it. Like there's really no other option. Like there's no other option. We have to win. We have to.
But I think also you just mentioned before about how you have these other tag teams. I think it's going to make especially I think right now the tag team division of Immortal, because you got you guys, you got Sons of Allah, you got Edge of Hope, you have the team that came in towards the end.
Yeah.
I think they usually wrestle a lot in TIW. So they're kind of a new, I know they're kind of returned, but you have the 4 of you guys right there. Plus you also have, Hired Inc. is probably going to be lurking around somewhere.
Yep.
So it's like, if you guys, and believe me, I hope you guys end up winning.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Because I take the Sons of, and I'll say this much: I put them over a lot, and people will make jokes with me and say, I'm the biggest, I'm the number 1 fan of the Sons of Allah. But I think at this point, I think they've run their course already.
I will say, I'll tell you what: when their music hits and they come out, boy, do the crowd hate them.
I've said that.
That might be an understatement that they hate them. They're probably lucky they don't get jumped in the parking lot. If I had to be honest, but
I'll put it this way, and you being a wrestling fan, you're gonna get my reference here in a second.
Yep.
You take that team, put Blaze and Bin in the original ECW.
Yeah.
In Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard stories of the Dudley Boys causing riots.
Oh yeah.
I can only imagine what and especially with their promos.
Oh. Yeah.
I can already see the images of oh my God, the 2300 arena is burning down as we speak.
Right? Yeah.
But to me, and I'm not trying to sit there and say, that I want it to happen. I don't. But I just think at this point, they have solidified themselves and I've said this before in this program. Sons of Allah to me have solidified themselves as the flag bearers of the tag team division. But I just think whoever ends up beating them, if it is you guys, Edge of Hope or whoever, you can turn around and go, okay, it'll be like your stamp of approval. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've been at the top for over a year now, I think. I think they've been champions for over a year. So, anytime you knock somebody off that's been at the top for a year, that's a long time to be at the top. So I agree. And we're fortunate because there's a lot of great tag teams in this area. And I think it's underlooked. There's a lot of teams that haven't debuted yet at Immortal, and hopefully they will. And they're phenomenal. Like we had American Strong Style there, like High Seas. I can't put them over enough. I mean, they had 2 Infinity and Beyond, which is Cheech and Colin there. Like they've all been in at Immortal in the past year. Like those are some top tier might be an understatement. And, they've been around for a long time, and it's It's cool. And I'm happy to be a part of it, you know, and like Mark and I, like we went to war at NYCW against the Nazi Mafia. Like those, I don't know if you've heard of those guys, but they are phenomenal. You know, hopefully we could get them over at Immortal. You know, it's nothing but, you know, iron sharpens iron. And we've been fortunate. We got a lot of great tag teams over there.
Oh, and that's my biggest thing is when it comes to pro wrestling, I guess you could say I'm a big mark for tag team wrestling.
Yep.
So when it's you guys, when it's Edge of Hope, the Sons of Allah, you know, any of them, I'll be the one to sit there and go, okay, because I'm always big in the storytelling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not so big in the, okay, you know, you guys are going to get 10 minutes, go get your shit in. You know, as the term has been said. But when it comes, like I said this before and I'll say this again. When it comes to you guys, you guys tell the story. And that's all you can do, especially working with a team like Ben and Blaze that you guys have been for the last, you know, feels like an eternity now.
So long. Yeah.
But to me, it feels more like, okay, it feels more like you guys are telling the story.
Yeah.
You guys are putting the work in. But I want to take a little bit of a detour away from the wrestling for a second, because I know you also have the 16 Stone Brewery.
Yes. Yes.
Now, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to visit it when I was up there for the last show, but I definitely want to come by and visit because I actually have an idea. I would like to try to run past you.
Yep.
Afterwards about possibly having an Around the Ropes beer.
Easy.
Possibly.
We can figure something out. I'm not worried. We'll figure it out.
But how did that whole thing come to fruition?
So this is a long story, but I will try to keep it condensed for you. So basically, long story short, 11 years ago, my brother and I both had jobs that we didn't love. And we were like, hey, let's get into real estate because that makes sense, right? Something like that. So we're actually from Halipatin, which is a very small town, 440 people. We grew up there. Like that's where our parents were there forever. So an old hotel that came up for grabs, and we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy it. Building was basically condemned. We're going to buy it. We're going to remodel it, and we're going to turn it into apartments because we're smart or something like that, or so we think. And so, we did a walkthrough in the building, and there was an old bar that was downstairs, an old hotel. They had like a banquet hall and everything. So then we had the idea, like, okay, wait a second. What if we have apartments in the top floor? On the bottom floor, we're going to have a bar. That sounds like fun. So basically, that is how it started. And we tried to be a craft beer bar, and which is, at that time, Blue Moon was weird, in our area. They're like, oh, I don't know about that. You put an orange in a beer, that's weird. So it sounds crazy, but like that's what we, it was only 11 years ago, but that, craft beer wasn't big then, and we kind of like stuck to it, and we had like this little craft beer bar, and we started building, and we were like, wait a second, we've done a little bit of home brewing, we've done a little bit of this, let's start making our own beer. And so we had the bar 2013. 2017 we started making our own beer. So we were a craft beer bar for about 4 years, and we're like, hey, let's try to make our own beer. And that is literally the story.
All I know is this. I remember in the last couple of Immortal shows, I kept hearing about it. I kept hearing everybody was like, oh, 16 Stone. And then I know, the show was in Utica. And in my head, I was like, maybe I'll take the trip over. But I was like, I wasn't too familiar with everything up there. So I was like, I'll be up here again. But I'm not a big beer drinker. But the opportunity to go visit, and it actually would be my first local brewery type thing.
Okay.
Which I've never experienced before. Very
cool. Well, I would be honored if 16 Stone was your first choice.
Yeah, I would definitely, because like I said, I've been up in that area, in Utica, Albany, that whole a crap ton of times now. I feel like it's my second home now at this point.
Oh yeah.
And I was actually just recently up in Albany for the Hall of Fame weekend.
Oh, okay, very cool.
And honestly, I always love coming up there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Was that your first time at the Hall of Fame show?
No, I was at the show last year. Which is why when you mentioned before about
Yeah,
NYCW,
yeah.
I was like, oh, I can tell you, when we off air, I'll tell you my thing with them because they kind of
So,
screwed
I'm
us.
going to give you a spoiler because you know that I wrestled on that show, right?
Which match were you in?
It was me versus Cody Hall.
Okay, now I remember that one. Okay. Okay.
I got some stories for you we could talk about afterwards, but
Oh.
Cody Hall was great dude. Great dude.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about that off there because
Perfect.
there was some stuff with that. But yeah, I would love to. And actually, it's funny. I mentioned, about Around the Ropes beer. I know if you're a coffee drinker, but I'll mention this for people who are watching. We have our own coffee.
Okay, yeah.
And this is actually done for us by the company called Motor Oil Coffee.
Were they the ones that were at the Hall of Fame show last year? Oh, yes. Wow, what a small world.
Yeah. And honestly, like I said, the coffee thing has been great. But if we can add like a Around the Ropes beer to it,
Yeah.
that would just give me like that thing of, okay, this is becoming something.
So you said you were at the Rome show, right, at Immortal?
Yeah, the roads.
It was the
Yeah, I was
Royal
at the
Rumble.
yeah.
Yeah, because that was actually how it started. Was I don't know if I'm getting off topic, but in November of last year we did a beer for the Sandman when he came to Utica, and he was at our hardcore match and we had Sandman beer, and he was like, hey, can you make a beer for me? We're like, yeah, sure, we can figure it out. So at the Rome show we had the Power Supply beer, we had the Moonlight Sun beer.
Yes,
And
I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So those are easy requests that we could get done. No worries.
Yeah,
I do have to. One of my guys, I do owe him a beer too. His name is Jake Adams. I have not forgot about it. We will talk. I'll hopefully if he watches this, he'll appreciate the shout out. I hope.
But yeah, I just think to me that would be like that moment for me. It's like, okay, we have the coffee, but now there's a beer that it's like that would just blow me away. But we'll talk about more about that off there. But last question I got for you, and I asked this to everybody.
I'm ready.
And believe me, it's not a difficult one. Trust me.
Okay, I'm a little worried, but we'll get it.
If you had the opportunity, and this one, I'm actually going to switch it up for you a little bit because you are part of the tag team.
Yep.
If you had the opportunity to face any wrestler, any promotion, doesn't matter if they're deceased or still with us today.
Oh.
Who would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Nobody's ever asked me that before, I don't think. So what's funny is I heard this on a different podcast, and my immediate reaction was Bret Hart. That was kind of somebody that I've always really enjoyed. Now I'm gonna take a little twist because I used to hate this guy. I used to hate this man, and as I started getting into wrestling and learning more about it, I think it would be wild to wrestle John Cena.
Interesting.
And the reason that I will say this, and this is maybe a weird reason, is I don't think there's anybody better to reacting to the crowd during a match than him. He calls a lot of things in the ring, and I think it would be absolutely wild to you go through it and you learn from a guy who listen because trust me, I've thought about this a lot. Bret Hart, Austin, Rock, like all that would be crazy. But I think like the new era of wrestling, he had a unique style that a lot of people hated. But boy, did the crowd react to him one way or another. And I think that would be absolutely wild.
I gotta admit, that's a lot of times when I've asked other wrestlers in the past that question, I always get the comment of Hulk Hogan, The Rock, But I gotta admit, that's a first one. But
okay. And like the same thing too. Like I think easy answers would be like Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Great Muta. Like you could pick any wrestling legend, but I just think that it's for somebody that you kind of knew what was coming. Boy, that he had the crowd right here the entire time, and whether you liked him or hated him, you cared one way or another. And I think it would be wild to go through a match with him where he knows what's going on. One way or another, he knew what was going on, and I think that'd be cool.
Okay, now the piggyback question for that.
Absolutely.
Tag team, who would it be?
See, that's tough. Like, I think, my the same thing too. I will think wow. I think for Mark and I would be interested in wrestling the Dudley Boys. I think that would be one where those guys were underrated. As crazy as that sounds, I think they're one of the best tag teams of all time. So I would pick them.
Well, I was going to say September 9th, Impact 1000 could happen.
What's that? I'm not aware of this.
Up in Westchester.
Oh, Westchester? Oh, okay.
They're doing Impact 1000, and Team 3D will be on the card.
Oh, I might have to check that out. My sister-in-law is from Westchester.
I think it's, if not, I'll double check and I'll let you know afterwards. But yeah, I think it's Westchester because I know they're doing Victory Road in White Plains.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was that close. I thought it was farther out. But yeah, I think that would be cool. I think that's who I would put up there. I don't know. I'd have to talk to Mark, but I was like that or the Steiner brothers, like Prime Steiner brothers sounds pretty cool too. But I don't know. I think the Dudleys sounds very appealing to me.
Well, we all know your favorite tag team to work with is the Sons of Allah.
Yeah. So yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But Adam, it's been a blast having you on.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was. The door's open for you again whenever you like to come back on.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
And also love to have whenever when we do this again, possibly have you and your tag partner on.
I would love it. He's a busy guy. I know I had to pick a weird time, but we can make it happen. We'll figure it out.
Absolutely. But before we let you go, though, where can the fans find you on social media, and what do you have coming up that you like to promote?
All right, social media. I am the Adam Stone on Instagram. I'm Adam Stone on Facebook. I am Adam 16 Stone on Twitter, but I'm not great at Twitter, or excuse me, X, whatever you want to call it. I don't really post on there, so if you're trying to get a hold of me, that's probably not the right one. But yeah, those are the big ones. Coming up shows is I'm going to be at pretty much all the Immortals till they get rid of me. So that's September 16th, I think October 21st, and whatever the November show is. I'm not sure what the date is on that one yet. I'll have to look at that. I am at the New Pro Wrestling show at October 27th at the Calit Center in Oneida. I am very much looking forward to that. They put on a great first show. Please check those guys out. It'll be a blast, and check my social medias because I get hit in the head a lot. I forget what shows I'm going to be at, but those ones definitely I'll be at for sure.
Again, guys, you can catch Adam Stone, one half of Power Supply, September 16th, West Mooreland, New York, maybe taking on the Sons of Allah. You have to look at, keep in contact with Immortal Championship Wrestling for all that information. Of course, guys, hit the subscribe button for us. It costs you nothing. It does wonders for us. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're